Welcome to a briefing call of the Interagency Task Force on Israeli-Arab Issues on Israel's Arab minority in the 2019 general elections with your host, Liron Shoham. Liron, go ahead, please.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on today's briefing call on the role and participation of Israel's Arab citizens in the 2019 election cycle. Arab voter turnout in Israel hit an all-time low of 49.1% in the election. This stands in sharp contrast to the all-time high of 63.5% in 2015, after the smaller Arab and Jewish Arab parties unified into a joint list. On Tuesday, Arab society went to the polls following a divisive campaign cycle both within Arab society and in mainstream campaign discourse. Last February, the joint list split into two smaller alliances after a divisive negotiation period. At the same time, the legitimacy of Arab political participation was effectively questioned by right-wing campaigns and parties, while explicitly anti-Arab parties were reintroduced into the political fold. From the nation-state law passed in 2018 to the admitted use of hidden cameras by the Likud during voting in Arab polling stations last Tuesday, how does this campaign cycle reflect recent developments in Jewish-Arab relations? Why did so many Arab citizens sit out this election despite efforts by Arab leadership to get out the vote? What are the wider implications for Israel as a Jewish and democratic state? Joining us today to discuss these questions and more are Professor Mordechai Kremnitzer, Senior Fellow at the Israeli Democracy Institute, and Thabet Abu-Rass, Co-Executive Director of the Abraham Initiative. I invite you all to see their impressive professional biographies in the invitation if you have not done so already, but would like to move on directly to the content of this call. I would like to start by posing several questions to our speakers and then opening it up for Q&A. At that time, the operator will provide instructions for dialing in with your questions. You're also welcome to email me directly or Michelle Herrera, who received your RSVPs, with your questions during this call. So to get right into it, Professor Kremnitzer and Thabet Abu-Rass, could each of you speak about what for you were the most consequential aspects of this election cycle from the perspective of Israeli democratic discourse and from that of Arab society's perspectives on political participation? Professor Kremnitzer, would you please begin?
Yes, good evening. Thank you. There are 2 points that I would like to make. One is the fact that the Likud party, although it went not for the first time to elections without any agenda, and although it is being led by Mr. Netanyahu, who is being suspected with serious crimes of corruption, did increase its power and has now, it's not clear yet, between 35 or 36 seats in the Knesset instead of the 30 it is having now. And the second point of the most significant occurrences of these elections is attitude towards the Arab citizens of the State of Israel, which is signified by what the Prime Minister said. He said that the Arab parties are acting to destroy the State of Israel, and actually the main opposition, the new party, Blue-White, actually joined the Prime Minister and by regarding the Arabs as non-entity for political participation in any way, not as partners to a government and also not as partners to a coalition outside of the government. And this was also the approach of the Labour Party, and I think this shows to what kind of crisis relations between Jews and Arabs went down in the State of Israel.
Thabet, from the perspective of Arab society? Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, I believe Israel is a less democratic country and more alienating the Arab and marginalize them in the political level. I believe that the Likud party or the Netanyahu on the right wing, Israel today is more right wing and more radical in terms of politics towards the Arabs. And other things that I believe that is very obvious, the collapse of the left, of the political Zionist left. But all in all, I wanted to start by saying that I am heading an organization called the Abraham Initiatives, and we believe in our organization that the Arab citizens must be represented in all realms in the Israeli society. In large, this is happening, and there is progress taking place within the Arab minority. In their share of the job market, in hospitals, in higher education, and we are witnessing the expansion of Arab middle class level who are eager for equality and integration. However, the situation has not translated to political arena in Israel. We believe in the participation and integration of Arab citizens in Israeli political level, in the government level, every government, and in the Knesset, in public engagement and political process. It is good for the Arab citizen and it's good for Israel. Following the local election in October 2018, we were happy to see more and more integration of the Arab community in the local level and the municipal level, where we operating as an NGO. Today, all 7 mixed cities in Israel have a Jewish and Arab coalition. They are working together. Jewish and Arab coalition that runs the cities regardless of the ideological and political background of the mayors. There are some Likud mayors, even Israel Beitenu mayors. The situation is not perfect, and discrimination in different levels do exist in the mixed cities. Yet, Jewish and Arab leaders committed to work together for equal treatment and provision of services for all residents of the mixed cities. We believe that this provides a future picture of how the national political arena will look in Israel, but is currently far from being realized.
So as a follow-up to both of you, what do you think accounts for such a gap between the discourse and the realities around integration of Arab society in economic terms, and as you say, Thabet, into political circles in the mixed cities and the local councils in mixed cities, and the difficulty even developing a constructive discourse around this possibility in the general political arena, in the national political arena? Thabet, do you want to go first, and then Professor Kremnitzer?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch it. I didn't hear it very well. If you can just repeat it.
Sure. What accounts, in your eyes, for such a gap between the discourse around and the realities, the improvements in economic integration of Arab society in Israel, and in the success in mixed cities to develop joint local councils between Jewish and Arab, and this concept and this discourse around political participation? What accounts for the gap between that and the idea of legitimate political participation and even representation of Arab society in the national arena?
Yeah, well, I believe Arabs in the local level are they are citizens. We are talking about the provision of services, how to improve their quality of life in those mixed cities, and they are more pragmatic politics. I think that the Arab politics in the mixed cities, it's not it's pragmatic politics, not politics of a cry as it's in the national level. So, and the Arabs in the mixed cities, they are in large numbers. If we talk about Lod, for example, we are talking about 1/3 of the population there. They are very visible, and you cannot just ignore them. The same thing with Nazareth elite, and you can name it in Akko, also in Haifa. And I believe that mayors are more pragmatic, Jewish mayors also more pragmatic than the national leader. So we can see more and more cooperation between Arabs and Jews in this level. Now, in the national level, I believe that the government did. We saw that the 922 plan, for example, things are moving in the right direction in terms of economic development. However, there are still issues in stake, like the issue of housing, the planning, the issue of fighting combating crime and violence within the Arab community. These are the main challenges that Arab MKs, Arab leaders cannot do anything. I believe that the government should initiate. And as long as we see that the Arab political parties are not part of any coalition, like in the municipal level, this is the case since the inception of the State of Israel. Arab parties never invited to be a part of any coalition. And this is the difference, really, that we see the low turnout in the national level and we see high turnout in the municipal level.
Thank you. Professor Kremnitzer, do you have a response to this particularly, or can you please speak to the gap in what makes it possible for such divisive political discourse on Jewish-Arab lines in the national arena?
Yes, I think that on the economical issue, and as Thabet said, the government, this government was investing money in the Arab sector. The explanation in my mind is simple. This government is not stupid, and therefore they recognize the economical potential of the Arab population, and they have the intention to make use of this potential. Now, at the same time, there are two elements that push this rightist government towards a hostile attitude towards the Arab population. The first is the Israeli government is leading Israel from a democracy, not perfect, but a democracy, to some kind of an authoritarian regime. Now, in order to succeed in this move, you need politically to make the distinction between us and the enemy. This is how it is being done in all regimes that move towards an authoritarian regime. And so the enemy is obvious. It's the Arab minority. And this is connected to the broader picture that this government is portraying concerning the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And the narrative that the government is successfully selling to the Jewish public in Israel is the following. The Palestinians are an essential and eternal enemy of the state of Israel. There is nothing that we Jews can do about it. And therefore the issue of settlements, the fate of the West Bank are not really issues, because we are doomed to keep them because of security considerations, because the West Bank is populated by eternal enemies of the state of Israel. Now, this has an implication on the Israeli Arab, the citizens of Israel. Since they belong to the same people, the Palestinian people, they are also considered to be part of this enemy. Therefore, because of these two perspectives, the internal perspective of the regime and the external perspective of the conflict, politics drive the conception of the Israeli Arabs as an enemy of the state of Israel, the Jewish state of Israel.
I want to step back a little bit, because we got into the broader discourse pretty quickly and just talk about some of the events that marked this campaign season. Maybe if we can get into some of the concretes, can you both speak about what, maybe Thabet, from your perspective, what about the campaign discourse, how is this campaign discourse any more challenging for Arab society from the mainstream campaigns, and what happened within the joint list and that caused its split, and how Arab society responded to this? And then I will frame a similar question for Professor Kremnitzer.
Yeah, in large, the campaigns in the Jewish community, it was very negative campaigns, strong fear discourse and politics of fear from the Arabs, and it's reflected also within the Arab community that has also negative campaigns to try to bring the Arab voters to the ballots. Actually, Arabs didn't come to the ballots in droves until the evening hours, and until the Arabic Gwald, Hallimu, it's the equal to Gwald in Yiddish. So I believe until 6-7 o'clock in the evening, both Arab political parties were almost erased from the political map. All in all, I can say that there is a lot of frustration from the government itself, from the campaign, both campaigns that led by both leaders, black leaders, from Netanyahu and from also Gantz, but also frustration from the dismantling of the joint list and the fact that Arabs didn't go together. In any case, the fact that both campaigns of the Israeli leaders, Netanyahu, especially Gantz, didn't refer to the Arabs, didn't count on the Arabs. I personally approached Gantz. I invited myself to talk with him, asking him to, we tried to approach all political leaders in Israel, and we succeeded to talk with Gantz, asking him to come up with inclusive messages, to count on the Arabs, to talk with the Arabs as citizens. Unfortunately, he refused to do that, and this is, I believe, was a hit for the Arab turnout. So frustration of the Israeli political system and Israeli democracy, it can be traced as one of the reasons for the low turnout. Nobody really relies on the Arabs, and this is one reason, but I believe that many Arabs believe there is a lack of effectiveness of Arab political parties, which always part of the opposition, and also the whole toxic political environment and incitement and the attack on Arab citizens. The process was largely enhanced by the national state law from last summer, continued into the same day of election, with PR firm recruiting 1,300 Jewish settlers attending the ballots with the hidden cameras. So all in all, I can say the whole toxic environment didn't help to bring Arabs more to the ballots. Beside I believe that the Arab two political parties didn't have a real campaign. They didn't try to solve problems, technical problems. For example, I can give one good example of the technical problems. Still, there are people cannot cast their votes because they don't have access to ballots. The problem still exists in the unrecognized villages in the Negev, where in some cases less than 20% of the total voters in that ballots, only 20% of the voters really cast their votes. All in all, in the Negev, there is a bigger problem with only 37% of the total voters cast their vote. So Arabs in large, they didn't have effective campaigns, and there is a negative campaign, I believe, by Netanyahu and from the Arab point of view. And Gantz, they didn't help to bring the Arabs really to the ballots.
Thank you. There's several things I want to follow up there, and then we'll open it up for questions. But first, regarding the nation-state law, to Professor Kremnitzer, how do you see the impact of the nation-state law in the level of divisive discourse that was part of the campaign? And maybe specifically, you can talk about the exchange between Rotem Sela, a media personality, and Prime Minister Netanyahu that referenced this explicitly. Was this in any way a surprise or turning point in the campaign or in this discourse? And feel free to speak more broadly about the nation-state law as an issue in this campaign.
Well, the nation-state law is really something that all Jews should be ashamed of, because what it is doing is something that you never do in a democracy. You never exclude part of the citizens from the state, and this is exactly what the nation law is doing. It describes Israel as being a state of the Jewish people, but it does not include the citizens who are not Jews, mainly the Arab citizens, in the picture of the people who own the state. And also the law speaks about Jewish settlement, that the state has a duty to promote Jewish settlement, not settlements for all citizens, but Jewish settlements, which is anti-equality and anti-democratic. And it is being reflected in the debate between the Prime Minister and Mrs. Sela, when the Prime Minister said, well, Israel is not a state of all its citizens. And by this, actually, Netanyahu admits that in his eyes, Israel is not a real democracy, which is really shameful. I have stronger words, but I will not use them. I think that what happened in Israeli politics is that to be to the left of the Likud is to be anti-patriotic, almost being a traitor. So, if I take the campaign of Gantz, for instance, he refused to use the words two states as a solution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. All efforts to draw from his mouth a sentence saying that this is the solution of the conflict failed. He did not admit it. And with this comes his refusal to speak of Arab parties as a possible partner to a coalition, whether within the government or outside of the government. And in this he was not different from the Labour Party. And the whole idea is not to be less patriotic than the Likud, and patriotism is identified with having a super nationalistic state, a state where Jews are superior to Arabs, a state where Arabs are not considered to be real citizens, full citizens, citizens who can be partners in really governing the country. I cannot say, because I don't know, what exactly was the impact of this kind of basic law, the basic law, the nation, or the thing that the Prime Minister said, to what extent this had an impact on Arab voters. But if I put myself in their shoes, I would definitely be influenced, and negatively influenced, by this. Actually, I think that this new basic law is a piece of legislation with a clear impact of humiliating the Arab minority.
Thabet, do you want to weigh in on that aspect of the question before I move on?
Yeah, well, I guess the nation-state law, and not only the nation-state law. Actually, there are several laws and bills introduced in the last 4 years that downgrade the Arab status as citizens. We are less citizens today, while really in the last decade, I believe that the Arabs are taking their citizenship more seriously. They are knocking in the doors of the government and the political parties. They want to be included, to be part, to be integrated. So I think the nation-state law that hopefully will be changed or amended. In any case, it's bad for the state of Israel. It's bad for us too. We are not going to accept the notion that we are less citizens, not equal citizens than anybody else. This is going to harm any future cooperation between Arabs and Jews. We thought that we are living in a period where Israel is really progressing in terms of equal rights and this kind of things, until we got this series of laws that put us behind. So it's not acceptable from our point of view. I don't want to talk about how it's harming the image of the state of Israel as a democratic country. I don't want to elaborate in this issue and ask, can Jewish people accept the idea being less citizens than the rest of the Americans, for example, or something like that? I think it's a shame for the state of Israel. It's a shame for the government of Israel to have such a law.
Okay, my last question before we open it up. Right now, the members of parliament of the Knesset from the Arab and Jewish Arab parties will drop from 13 in the last Knesset to 10, and the total number of Arab MKs in the Knesset totally from all parties from 17 to 12. How do you see this as impacting or making any change in state-minority relations and Jewish-Arab relations, if any, from the last Knesset? And what do you hope to see from Jewish and Arab political leaders and civil society going forward in response to the outcomes and realities of this cycle?
Well, it's me, right?
Sure, it's both of you. But yes, Thabet, please.
Yeah. Well, I think the number of Arab MKs, it's not that important. The most important thing, if the leaders of Israel, the Prime Minister and his government is going to change the policy. I would like to remind all of us that during Oslo and the Rabin government, the number of Arab MKs were only 5 members of Knesset, and they have a lot of influence in the government and a great relationship and cooperation with without being part of the government, just because we had a great Prime Minister who decided to change the policy towards Arab to go in a peace process and so forth. So the number, it's not that important. I wish to have more Arab MKs, okay? But it's very important also to pay attention that we have a government this time not only we are not going to have any Arab minister within the coming government, we will have in the coalition, the right-wing coalition, Netanyahu's coalition, we will have only one Arab MK. Out of 65, 67 MKs, we have a Druze MK that belongs to the Likud party, and that's it. But still, there are a few good things that I think that discussing after this election and the results, the fact that the Arab voters saved Meretz, the Zionist party of Meretz. 40,000 votes went to Meretz that came from the Arab community. It's giving a hope that something will emerge soon. Arabs and Jews will cooperate and start to talk about that. You know, I believe that among Jews, more voices in favor of Arab-Jewish political cooperation. And I am reading Haaretz, I'm reading other newspapers, and I see that voices that we didn't hear in the past. They are calling for the establishment even of a Jewish Arab political party, and especially after the collapse of the left-wing parties. And among Arabs, there is increasing, while we have increasing polarization within the Arab citizens, more people calling, more voices coming from the Arab community, especially from intellectuals and academicians, calling for link up with Zionist left. So we see some hope that not everything is really bad following this election, but yes, the representation of the Arab MKs, it's less important. What's important, which policy Netanyahu will come up, will introduce to the Arabs. I can just remind you that 2 months ago, a reduction of 400 million shekels of the budget that allocated for the combating crime and violence was deducted, and this is bad. If this is an indication for the coming government is going to be bad, this will bring about polarization relationship between the Israeli government and the Arab citizens of Israel.
Thank you. And Professor Kremnitzer, what do you think can be possible or hope to see emerge from this next Knesset or this next political cycle?
First of all, if we have a narrow rightist government, I'm afraid that we are going to see dark days for Israeli democracy and for Israel as a state governed by the rule of law. It's clear that this coalition will try to take Netanyahu off the hook from the criminal charges against him. It's clear that they will try to destroy the independence of the judiciary and to move on in an effort to create a government that has unlimited powers. A government with unlimited powers is bad news for all citizens. It's especially bad news for the permanent minorities. I have some hope that Israeli Jews who are committed to democratic values will understand that the only hope for Israeli democracy is by joining forces, Jews and Arabs together. And there is no way to win this fight over democracy excluding the Arabs. It is impossible. And sometimes necessity creates positive things, and I hope that this kind of necessity will create an Arab-Jewish partnership, political partnership, which is the only way to save Israeli democracy from the grave dangers that are lying ahead.
Thank you. Operator, I would like to open the call for questions from participants.
All right. If you'd like to ask a question, please press #1 on your phone now. Again, that's #1 if you have any questions. Our first question comes from, let me just open the line now. Hold on, please. Please state your name and your question.
Hi, it's Phyllis Bernstein. I'm wondering what you think with the conversation of annexation in the West Bank and some of that conversation that took place, how that will affect the relations between the Arab citizens and the country and the government. Did I come out?
Yes, we heard you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Lyra?
Sorry. Thabet, Professor Kremnitzer, would you like to respond?
Well, I believe... go ahead, Mota.
No, go ahead, Thabet.
Yeah. Well, I believe annexation of territories will affect, no doubt, will affect our relation with the government. All in all, we are talking about our people. If I would like to give myself as an example, half of my family live in Gaza Strip. I cannot see them. There is a siege on Gaza. I cannot even. They are far, 60 miles from my home, my hometown, and I cannot see them. So the question, which kind of annexation, I believe Israel should keep most of the Israelis in favor of two-state solution. I would like to see a peace between my country, Israel, and my people, the Palestinians, to guarantee the right of self-determination for the Palestinian people, just the way it's for the Israelis too. And I would like to see peace, only peace between my people. Anything is harming my people, the Palestinian, or my citizen colleagues in citizenship in Israel, it's really bad. I would like to see both parties live in peace.
Yes, I fully agree. I think that if there is annexation, the chances that it will cause a violent outburst in the West Bank are, this is a realistic prospect. And whenever there is violence between Palestinians in the West Bank and the State of Israel, this has a very negative impact on the relations between Jews and Palestinians within Israel. So annexation is really a recipe for troubles between Jews and Palestinians on both sides of the Green Line. And I think that people should raise their voice so that democratic governments, wherever they are, should send a clear message to the government of Israel against annexation.
Thank you. Operator, is there anyone in the queue?
Yes, I'm opening the next line.
Hi, good afternoon in the United States. I'm sorry, I got on the phone a little bit late, and I apologize if I'm repeating something that was already said, but I wanted to ask a couple of questions. Number one, what do you both anticipate will happen to 922 with what we anticipate as the makeup of the future coalition? And yeah, I'm going to leave it right there.
And who are you?
I'm sorry, Dr. Mark Rosing.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. Professor Kremnitzer, do you want to start?
I really don't know what will happen to 922. As I said before, even a righteous government understands the potential of the economical potential of the Arab sector. So they have an incentive to go on with this plan. But on the other hand, such a narrow rightist government may be unable to resist its hostile sentiments towards the Arab population, and then the plan may be harmed. So it's difficult to foresee what will happen.
And Thabet?
Yeah, I believe it is in the interest of the State of Israel and the government of Israel to invest in the Arab community. Just to give you the figure, Arabs make up around 20% of the total population. Their contribution to the Israeli GDP, it's only 10%. There is a big gap, and this is the major reason why the government is investing so much money in economic development and giving scholarships and bringing more and more Arab students to Israeli campuses. I believe this will continue. Honestly, I know about a plan designated for the mixed towns now. It's a draft that the government already prepared for the mixed town, that for the Arab people, Arab population of the mixed towns. So if you ask me, 922 will continue. Hopefully we'll see 923. And despite the deduction of 400 million shekels from the budget that designated to combat crime and violence, I believe it's very important. The issue of crime within the Arab community is the first challenge faced by the Arab community, and no economic development. The economic development will not succeed with this high crime rate within the Arab community.
Can I ask another question? Am I still on?
You are still on. Yes.
But I don't want to, if there's somebody else waiting, I don't want to do that. Is it okay?
Go ahead.
There's nobody.
I have one, but go ahead.
I don't know if you touched on this because, again, I got on a little bit late. I was wondering if you could comment a little bit about just the changes. First of all, I believe I probably missed it, your comment about the changes, about the fact that a smaller percentage of Israeli or Palestinian Israelis voted. But can you make a comment also about any changes in Druze voting patterns due to the nation-state law, and whether we think those are, if there are in fact, and it appears that there are, whether those are likely to be temporary or that's a turning point in their tendency to lean towards right of center?
Well, I will take this question. As we already mentioned, that the turnouts in the Arab community was very low. It's the lowest ever, with 49% of the total turnout. It was obvious in the largest cities. For example, in Arab cities, for example, in Nazareth, the turnout was 39%, only 39%. The same in Rahat, the second largest Arab city, the Bedouin city of Rahat, 42%. The same with Al-Fahim, 45%, even less than average among Arabs. But you ask about the Druze, we witnessed a rise in the turnout among Druze, who casted their votes in unprecedented percentage of over 65%. Usually, the Druze are not voting that much this time. Over 65%. It can be traced to kind of political revivalism and activism due to the opposition of the nation-state law. It's very obvious also that 95% of the Druze votes went to Jewish Zionist parties. And the Druze this time will be represented with 2 MKs. Usually have 3 or 4. This time 2 MKs. One in the Likud party and the women in the Kahol Lavan party, Gantz party. This is first time ever a Druze women will be in the Knesset. If we add 2 more Arab women in the Knesset, so we'll have together 3 Arab women. This is also unprecedented. 3 Arab women in a Knesset that have lower number of women in large. I would like to say a few things about the votes to Zionist parties. Last time, 2015, only 17% of the total Arab votes went to the Zionist Jewish parties. This time, it's jumped to 31 plus 31%. It's unprecedented in the last 20 years. Actually, this percentage is taking us back to the 90s during Rabin and after Rabin. It's obvious. Jewish Zionist parties got 130,000 votes, 40,000 of them for Meretz. As I mentioned, Meretz was saved by Arab votes. It's very important. It's open the eyes of people. Well, if so many Arabs are voting for Meretz, how come we cannot really think about Arab Jewish party and open the Meretz maybe, or a collaboration between Hadash and Meretz, or even more talking about a new political party, Jewish Arab political party.
I have a question over email that follows up on Arab voter turnout. The low voter turnout may be fueled by frustration, but it seems so counterproductive. How do you explain this, since boycott doesn't seem to affect anyone but the Arab citizens most? And what do you think will or can be done to bring it back up in the future?
Well, sorry.
Yes, no, this was to you. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I believe that the Arab turnout is bad out of frustration, really, and from the, as I mentioned, from the political system in Israel, and from the Israeli democracy. Arabs are asking themselves, why I have to vote if nobody is relying on me? If my vote is not count, it's better not to vote. Today, following the election, there are so many articles in Arab newspapers and in favor of boycotting the election. Actually, for the first time, we saw a boycott of movement and say, well, Israel, we are actually, by voting the Israeli election, we are lightening the Israeli democracy, and let's just boycott the election in the national level, and let the Jews do whatever they want, okay? Nobody is relying on us, nobody is counting our vote. So there is kind of polarization within the Arab community. In one hand, people say, let us boycott in larger numbers, and others say, let's go ahead and build a partnership with the Zionist parties. This is the only way we can influence the Israeli political system.
Thank you.
I would add that if there is a narrow rightist government, the chances to change the nation-state law are low. And I would also add that since there is a strong wish from the Arab population to be integrated in the Israeli society, I think that the Jewish sector will act not prudently if this wish will not be answered by readiness to full cooperation, including political cooperation between Arabs and Jews. I think this must be clearly the way for a better future, and I hope people see it in this way in the future.
I agree.
Thank you.
Operator, thank you. And actually, I had a question, Professor Kremnitzer, about the nation-state law and
yes.
What about it should be amended or could be amended. You sort of are saying that you don't think anything will happen with it, but if something would, how could it be amended?
Well, it's not so difficult. First of all, in the definition of the state, the Arab minority has to be mentioned as part of the state. Secondly, democracy and equality have to be mentioned. The status of the Arab language has to be changed to what it is, to what it was before the nation-state law, which means an official language, and the provision about Jewish settlement has to be wiped out. I think with these changes, and also another important point, there has to be a recognition of collective cultural rights of minorities. I underline collective cultural rights of the minorities.
Are there any other? Thank you. Are there, operator? Are there any other calls in the queue? Questions?
Yes,
in the queue?
we do. I'm opening the line now. Your line is now open. Please state your name and your question.
Yeah, this is Alan Divak. I actually have two unrelated questions. One is whether there's a possibility, even in the current Knesset, if these signs of cooperation and pragmatism at the local level will sort of percolate up to the national level. I mean, we don't see it in the makeup of the Knesset necessarily, but are there maybe pockets of pragmatism amongst people who will be part of the government? So that's sort of question one, and I'll open with that.
Thabet, you spoke about these partnerships in the local level.
Yes, I think there are a lot of partnerships in the local levels. First of all, in the NGOs level, there are a lot of work together, Arabs and Jews. I am actually co-director of an Arab Jewish organization with 30 Arab and Jewish workers, with the Arab Jewish lay leaders, but also in terms of our discourse. We are promoting integration and equality between Arabs and Jews, and we are working with other Jewish and Arab NGOs. In the local level also, we see that in municipalities, all municipal coalitions, in the mixed cities it's mixed between Arabs and Jews. And Arabs are part of the decision-making process in those municipalities, which is great. Hopefully, and again, I would like to emphasize that the mayors are coming, from the right wing, parties. And still, when I see that the mayor of Nazareth Elite from the Likud party and his deputy from Hadash, I wonder why we cannot do that in the Knesset. It's a question that can. It's a question can be also. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think that's Alan's. Alan, if I may, I think that's Alan's question. How can that?
Exactly.
Do you see it percolating up, and do you see it percolating up, and can it, whether in this next Knesset and government, or in terms of longer term thinking, can this be a model that influences national politics?
Sure, I believe that more and more people, Arab intellectuals and academicians and Jewish leftists are talking about this issue. And, it's not about the left. I believe that Arabs today trying to learn from the model of the Haredic Jews. We should be in every single government, regardless if it's right or left. Yahdut HaTorah, it's an ultra-Orthodox Jewish anti-Zionist party. Why we have to put conditions for the Arabs? Arabs cannot be Zionist. Maybe they don't want to be Zionist, but still they are citizens and they're entitled to be part of the government or supported. I'm not saying that Arabs necessarily have to be minister. I wish that they agree and they can be offered to be minister, but they can be chairman of an Arab MK can be a chairman of an important Knesset committee, finance committee. Why not? So what's important to be part of the decision-making process. It's inside the government, outside the government. We have to learn from models from around the world, from different minorities, even from the Haredic Jews. But to see that in the end of the day, around the government, only Jews are sitting and ignoring, alienating, and marginalizing the 20% of the total population, the Arabs, it's really bad for Israel and for the Arabs too.
We're running out of time, so I want to ask each of you for closing thoughts. Perhaps if we start with Professor Kremnitzer, you can respond to this question about percolation of possible cooperation, partnership, maybe take it further to the idea of what might make an external bloc feasible in the future, and then segue into your closing thoughts, and then maybe Thabet can close.
Okay. I think in the Knesset, if we have a right-wing narrow coalition, maybe there can be some cooperation between the Arab parties and the ultra-Orthodox parties. We had some signs of it in the past, and we may see some signs of it in the future. And since the Likud has only 35 or 36 seats and is dependent on the other parties, a good relationship between the Arab parties, even with part of the other coalition parties, may be helpful. For the future, as I said before, I think only the acknowledgement of the reality would take Israel out of the crisis that we are now within from a democratic point of view. And the reality is that there is no way to save Israel's democracy without political cooperation between Jews and Arabs.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, I think there is a lot to do outside the Knesset and outside the government, and I believe that Arabs and Jews should strengthen their relationship. They are meeting in the workplace, in universities, in hospitals, everywhere, in the academy. So I think there is a very important role that the NGOs can play. We should strengthen this role. I believe that still, yes, right-wing government, but we can pressure this government. We entitled to rights, basic rights. We entitled to equality, and we have to strive, both Arabs and Jews, to work together at a political level and to pressure the government. All in all, I believe that something good will come up out of this election. We will see Arabs and Jews are cooperating in the political level. There is no other way but to cooperate in the political level. Arabs and Jews are cooperating almost in everything, okay, except politics. It's about time. I believe that Arab leadership also realizing that more and more. And I see that we'll see some changes in political organizations, political parties toward the coming election. That's going to be, I guess, within 2 years, not more than that.
On that note, perhaps we'll speak with both of you again soon. Thank you very much for taking the time and sharing your insights. I know that there's a lot more we could cover, but I hope we have answered some of people's immediate questions, and we look forward to following these developments along with our peers in Israel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kremnitzer.
Thank you.
Thabet Abu-Rass. This call will be recorded for anyone and up on our website in a few days for anyone who wants to catch any details. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes today's conference call. Have a great day.